Looking good, Ed.
So I'm a huge fan of talking to people who are really good at doing something. Doesn't matter what it is. That if it's the best soap maker in Decatur, I'm interested in talking with her to figure out what it is that makes her tick. If it's the best debater that I've ever seen, I'm interested in talking with them to figure out what motivates them. If it's the best grocery store clerk, there's this guy at Costco here in Atlanta that can check things out light years faster than anybody I have ever seen. And I've actually had a conversation with that guy about what motivates him and how did he become really good at doing what he does. We have someone in our office who I think is one of the greatest teachers that I have ever seen. That whether it was elementary school, high school, college, numerous professors, numerous lectures that I've seen. And I think that James Rowland is at the top of the list of teachers and motivators that I've ever seen. And I constantly have conversations with him about what it is that makes people great. What is it that makes people just outstanding at what they do? And a lot of times our conversations ultimately end up boiling down to conversations about football and football coaches. And so this lecture is really pretty much distilled from a lot of the conversations that I've had with J-Row, and it's titled The Path to Greatness. And while a lot of this will be about debate and how you can use, what tools and things you can use to get better at debate, I actually think and would like to think most of it, if not all of it, is about life. And what are some tenets that can be used to become great at whatever you decide to do in life, whether it's being a soap maker, whether it's being a union leader, whether it's being a lawyer, that these are all things that can be done in order to make you great. I'll use various quotes from coaches throughout this presentation, and that will be sort of the guide for most of the discussion. And I will start with who I consider the greatest coach, Nicholas Lou Saban, who won national titles for the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, in 2009, 2011, 2012, and will probably win another one this year. There are two pains in life. There's a pain of discipline, and there's a pain of disappointment. If you can handle the pain of discipline, then you will never have to deal with the pain of disappointment. Two juxtapositions. Discipline, disappointment. His notion is that if you're disciplined in the world, then it dramatically reduces the probability that you will have to deal with disappointment. I think that most people who are great are very much understand this philosophy and very much disciplined. That there is no accomplishment that has ever been made in life that didn't come with some level of discipline. Think about it. Think about it. Give me some names. Who are just someone that you think is great, far superior than most of the other people involved in that same activity?
Kobe.
Good.
Yep.
Some others.
Taylor Swift.
Woo! Taylor Swift. All right. All right. That some people consider her great, but she's definitely fantastic at her skill and has managed to be at the top of her discipline, music, and I think she falls in this category. Others.
LeBron James.
LeBron James. Michael Jordan. There's a year that like that. Back to back. LB and MJ. Yes, both. There's a conversation about whether or not LeBron James will become better than Michael Jordan.
No, never, not that good.
I'm still siding with MJ.
Yeah.
But with all of these, whether we are, even in the context of Taylor Swift or Michael Jordan or LeBron James, if you ask any of them, particularly Taylor Swift, she would tell you that talent was not enough. That talent is not a sufficient barometer for determining whether or not someone will become great, whether or not someone will become excellent at what they do. One of my favorite authors is this guy, Malcolm Gladwell. And Malcolm Gladwell wrote this book and did a study on what he considered outliers, those who were at the extreme end of the spectrum. In Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers. And he studied those people who were at the extreme end of the spectrum of what they did. They were the outliers. They were not part of the norm in what was going on in their discipline. And the common denominator of what he found for what it took to become an outlier was that those people invested 10,000 hours into their discipline. So before one could become great, before one could become outstanding, they had to have the discipline to invest 10,000 hours into that activity. If you look at whoever your child prodigies are, then we have this notion that there are certain people who are geniuses. There are certain people who are just born great. None of that is true. Your child prodigy just happened to be someone who started in their discipline much earlier than others and had the opportunity to invest 10,000 hours earlier than others had the opportunity to do so. But the common denominator is still the same. They invested 10,000 hours. That takes about 10 years of intense, focused training in order to do that. So if you invest 10 years of intense, focused training into an activity, you have the opportunity to become great. You have the opportunity to become an outlier in that. Whether it was Mozart, the composer, or Bobby Fischer, the grand chess master, all of them would tell you that it was 10,000 hours. That was an intense focus and discipline. The Beatles. The Beatles started in Hamburg, Germany. They were this little small band that got together. And what they ultimately did, they would play, they got this little local bar to allow them to play. And at this little local bar, they would play 3 sets a day. So they'd play in the morning, then they would play in the afternoon, then they'd play a late night session. And what they figured out was that, look, we're playing so often and we're starting to play in front of the same people that we probably need to diversify our set. We need to experiment a little bit with who's singing, who's playing, the types of music that we're engaged in. And ultimately, by the time the Beatles had made it to the United States, they had well over 10,000 hours. But the way in which it was depicted here in the States was that, oh my God, here's this new group that just burst on the scenes. No one had ever heard of them. But in these little local communities that they had been playing in, there had been people who had noticed them for 8, 9, 10 years playing there. 10,000 hours of an investment of time. Bill Gates, one of the greatest inventors in our history, started coding at Lakeside High School in Seattle, Washington. In high school. He had the opportunity for a friend of the family to go to this large computer company, and they would let him show up in the summer and work on their large mainframe computers, not little laptops. Those things are sort of new inventions. But they had these very large mainframe computers, and his friend of the family would just let him come in the summer and do coding. Come in after school and do coding. So by the time he showed up at Harvard, he had had over 10,000 hours of coding, and so it makes sense that they didn't have very much to teach him once he had shown up there, and that it was time for him to apply what he had already learned. And so dropping out of school wasn't something that he shouldn't have done. It made total sense that he would do it because he had already been an apprentice for 10,000 hours. He wasn't just making it to the scene. He had already been there for 10, 11 years doing what he's doing. Both of these people, yes, they had some natural talent, but everyone has some talent. We all show up to the scene with instinct, behavior, things that we are very good at, things that we can repeat. All of us have talent. our talents lie in different areas. It's a question of the application of that talent. And it's a question of focus, discipline, and utilization of that talent. The last example. There are these sisters called the Polgar sisters. P-O-L-G-A-R. And there was this guy, Martin Polgar, who was a philosopher and a scientist. And he wanted to dispel the notion that there was a notion of natural talent was the guide to determine greatness. Because up until this point, where he was in history, people said that, look, it was all about talent, that you had to be born with it. If you're not born with it, you're not going to be great. So what he did was that he took his daughter, and he raised his daughter from birth to learn chess. And he considered chess to be something that was very much grounded in reason and rationality. It was something that everyone could learn and that everyone could become great at if they became disciplined. It wasn't about the physicality, it was about the mentality. And that we could ultimately, with focused discipline, become great at it. And he saw that as the perfect playing field in order to test this hypothesis that we can train people to be great. That it was ultimately about the training and not about natural ability. And he had one daughter, trained her for 10 years, and after 10, 12 years, she became the amateur grand chess master, the first female in history to do so. She went on 3, 4 years later to become the first female grand chess master. Everyone said, this is a fluke. You just happen to have a daughter who acquired that particular skill. It had nothing to do with training. You didn't dispel the notion that it's natural talent. Your daughter just happened to have the natural talent. So what did he do? Had another daughter. Did it again. Now, same results, outstanding chess masters, both of them, and he wanted to do it a third time, but his wife wouldn't sign up for the experiment. But all of us, I think, should strive to be Polgarists. We should all strive to figure out how to take our training and become the best that we can possibly be. And in the context of what we're going to deal with over the next 2 to 6 weeks is figuring out how to become Polgarists within the context of debate. I have coached at Emory for 7 years now, and there are a litany of students who have been fantastic, and a few of them are sitting in the room now. There are two that I want to sort of talk about in the immediate moment, and I'll talk about a few others later. You have one debater, Ovas Inamula, who started here, Chattahoochee High School. Some of you are from there. Started off at Emory and ended up thinking, he thought that he was very good. He was outstanding. But his first year in debate, he wasn't very focused. That he wasn't the kind of student who seemed to be driven, and while very naturally talented, wasn't someone that people thought would end up being one of the best debaters in the country. His sophomore year, he ended up not being chosen by a partner who was very good because the partner thought that he was slacking a little bit and that he wasn't going to be able to accomplish the goals of being the best in the country. And one of the things that Ovas did, which I will never forget, was that he ended up dedicating himself to being the best and most productive researcher on the squad and sharing that effort with everyone on the squad. That it is easy once you've been rejected to become salty and to turn inward and become bitter. But he didn't do any of that. What he did was that he out-researched everyone that year. And there were debate rounds in which the person who rejected being his partner were in elimination rounds. Ovas was not debating in those, but the arguments that he had written were being used to win those debates, and he was okay with that. Because he felt like if he dedicated himself to getting better, if he disciplined himself, he would become one of the best debaters in the country, and that he would eventually get his due. That's something that I will always respect about the choice that he made, and I think that it became true. What all of these people have in common, whether it's a Voss, whether we're talking about Bobby Fischer, whether it's the Polgar sisters, is that they try to maximize the opportunities they have to excel, and they have an utter disdain for the lack of preparation. Every opportunity they have to excel, they attempt to maximize it. And they have an utter disdain for the lack of preparation. Greatness demands sacrifice. Sometimes you have to make a choice between being popular and being great. There are times in which you can't be both, and in fact, I think the vast majority of times, that is a choice that you have to make. Greatness demands that you take risks. Fear is inevitable. The fear of failure is something that we all will constantly have to deal with. Every time I stand up to deliver a speech, every time, without fail, I have a fear that something's going to go wrong. Now, that fear can be debilitating and prevent me from delivering that speech, or that fear can be motivating and encourage me to maximize the preparation time that I have to deliver the best speech that I can do. Most of the time, it's a fear that becomes motivating in order to assist me to prepare. Debate's hard. It is. It's very difficult. It is the most difficult thing I have ever done in my life, by far and away. That it's a new language. It is a language that's very different from what most of us speak on a day-to-day basis. Second, you can never perfect it. You will never deliver the perfect speech. There's something that you can always do to improve it. Every debate round is different. You will never have the same debate round twice. The topic is constantly changing. People are constantly innovating arguments, and you are expected to deal with that. Additionally, you're constantly competing with people who are older and better than you. That seems to be a recipe for failure. It's a recipe for constantly being in a position where you're going to have a lack of success. But what I consider it is in a position where you constantly have an opportunity to grow and develop. You constantly have the opportunity to become a better you. And that if you think about it that way, then you can get the most out of debate. That yes, it is a recipe for failure, but as Melissa Wade would like to say, it is an environment that's rich with opportunities for learning and advancement. However, I don't consider that to be an excuse for the lack of effort. I don't consider it to be an excuse for the lack of effort. So the rest of this conversation will be broken up in 4 or 5 parts. We'll see sort of how far I get. And ways in which you can apply effort to become better. You can motivate by fear. You can motivate by reward. But both of those methods are only temporary. The only lasting thing is self-motivation. The only lasting thing is self-motivation. Homer Rice, Georgia Tech, he won the Coach of the Year award multiple times. One of the things that I sort of take from this quote is that it's ultimately impossible to determine what motivates individuals. Only you can determine that. You got to figure out what it is that sustains your effort. And you should probably also try to be sort of proactive in letting other people know that. Sometimes it's competition. Sometimes it's just your development and growth getting better. Those don't always match up with one another. And if you have people trying to motivate you in a way that doesn't match up with what you're trying to do or what stimulates you, then it's not going to be successful. So you have to figure out what motivates you, and you have to be at the forefront of engaging that. Self-motivation. I think that motivation is ultimately a referendum just on how much you want something. It's a referendum on how much you want it. That if you are not motivated to wash the dishes, you clearly don't want clean dishes. And that's okay. If you are not motivated to deliver a practice speech, if you are not motivated to do research to figure out what the topic is, then I don't think that you are motivated to become better at debate. And I think that that is okay, but it's also true. So you got to feel it is ultimately a referendum on how much you want it. That if you're not motivated to do it, then you don't want it. You can't claim that you want to be great, but then say that you're not motivated to be great. Doesn't make sense. They don't add up. A couple of suggestions that I have for staying motivated. Stay focused on your goals. Stay focused on your goals. In 2009, 2010, Emory University had a debate team that statistically had the best debate season in history. Statistically. This team lost 9 debates going into the national tournament. A total of 9. They lost 9 debates. It's just absurd. They attended about 11 debate tournaments. They averaged being in the final round of every debate tournament they attended. They rarely, if ever, lost a preliminary debate round. Now this is crazy. I don't know if this will ever be duplicated again, that it is just an insane level of performance. Earlier in that year, the 2N, Stephen Wild, who most of you know, who is working with me in a lab, lost a debate. And he lost this late debate, and what he did was that he took the flow. He took his notes from that debate round, and he posted them to his wall in his dorm. And he said that every time he walked into his room, he saw the flow of that debate. And he never wanted to lose to that team again, and he never wanted to lose on the neg again. And so every time he saw it, it was motivating him to do more work, to get better. So that was one way he stayed focused. One way he stayed focused was to constantly have sort of a display of that's there. Second, have a sense of urgency. Have a sense of urgency. You have a captive audience of some really smart people here. Like, oh my God. If you have an opportunity to have a conversation with Nick Miller about persuasion and its value and how to get better at delivering a speech, and you don't take an opportunity to engage him on that, then you are being foolish. Because I know no one who is better at talking about that issue and explaining it in a way that allows for you to immediately apply it. And so you got some really smart people who are very good at a lot of different things, and they are here for you at this particular moment, and they are all interested in teaching. Everyone has a love for teaching. And so take advantage of the opportunities that you have to engage with those people. Have a sense of urgency about being involved with them, talking with them, asking questions, and figuring out what they know and how you can get better at that with what they have. Third, acknowledge and appreciate the gradual and small improvements that you have. Acknowledge and appreciate the small improvements that you have. That you're going to get better. You can't do something on a consistent basis and not improve. But the thing that happens a lot of times is that we don't see the small improvements because they're gradual, and we have a tendency to look at things in the short term. I think it has something a lot to do with sort of our mass-mediated society where everything is instant, everything is in small, short communication, where we all focus on sort of the immediate moment. But think about your debate season, think about your debate career in much longer terms. Think about it over the course of the year. Think about it over the course of 2 years. Think about it over the course of 4 years. Think about where you were a year ago from now. Think about where you were a year ago from now. Now think about your skill set at this particular moment. You feel much better about that. You've had dramatic improvements. Everyone in this room is better now than they were a year ago. Everyone in this room will be better a year from now than they are right now if you are focused and driven to do so. And so think in a more long-term application. The path to greatness is measured in decades. It's not measured in debate rounds. 4, ignore the accomplishments of others. Ignore the accomplishments of others. Those are not you. That's not the yardstick in which you are measuring yourself. You are trying to become the best debater you can become. You are not trying to become the best debater that someone else wants you to become. Your growth is measured by who you are and what you can accomplish, not what others have accomplished. You could have the ability to far exceed what everyone else has ever achieved in a particular area in life. But if you are only focused on what has already been accomplished by others, you're not going to maximize your potential. What you're interested in is maximizing your personal potential. So ignore what other people are accomplishing. However, be hypersensitive about tracking your own performance. Be hyper aware about tracking what you are accomplishing. One of the things that you can do is that you can have an Excel spreadsheet where you track your speaker points, your wins, who your judges are, and what comments that they have made. This should be done for every tournament and every debate round. And this is also a place to track the recommendations that your judges make for you. John Holland, who is working in the dorms here, applied this with a measure of expertise I have never seen. That, well, for one, he's just graduated with a degree in computer science, so he sort of thinks in this language already. But I would have conversations with him a few months ago about what his speaker points were, whether they were improving for particular judges, and he could trace them back 2 years ago where this judge gave him X speaker points versus this particular judge giving him Y speaker points now. And that meant that the judge had seen improvements, and it is an indicator that we should probably place that judge higher in his preference sheet for judging than we do for other debate teams. It was just mind-blowing the way in which he had applied that information. Now, John Holland is also someone who took a bunch of this stuff to heart. He was a very local debater from Atlanta, didn't travel nationally in high school, and showed up to Emory and had a class with a bunch of students who were very nationally competitive, outstanding high school debaters, debating in the late elimination rounds of the TOC. And John Holland didn't focus on those debaters. He focused on how he could become the best debater that he could become. And he ended up his senior year clearing at the national debate tournament, debating with a first-year debater, and being one of the more popular debaters on the circuit, and being identified as someone that every coach has said that they want on their squad. That I've had conversations this summer with people, and they were like, you need to make sure you get yourself another John Holland, because everyone acknowledged that he was dedicated and driven and he's the kind of person that everyone wants. And so you can become the kind of debater you want to be by being focused. Keep a judge log of your mini debates and your practice rounds. And the best way to do this is on your computer. After every presentation you have, the judge will give you comments. Your coaches will give you comments. And they'll make suggestions about what you can do to improve. So write those things down. Keep track of those things. That one, those things are helpful because they are guides for how you can grow and develop. The other thing that's valuable about those is that they will give you some indication of what that judge likes and appreciates. One of the things about debate is that the people who are judging you will judge you multiple times, over and over again. Think about your debates last year. Think about your judges. I'm sure that everyone in here who is debating, that you had judges who judged you 3, 4, 5 times. Now, think if you were able to read the judge comments after that first debate for your second debate, if you were able to read the judge comments for that fifth debate for your fifth debate, and you could read the comments after 1 through 4, it seems like you're in a position now to tailor your presentation to exactly what that person wants to hear. Persuasion is about audience analysis. Debate is about audience analysis. It's about understanding what your audience wants at that particular time. Your audience is your judge. Understanding what the judge wants and what the judge finds persuasive and being able to tailor it to them is pretty much a path towards you being successful. So track the notes. Track what they have. During the year, you want to do this during the course of your year. You want to do this during the course of your year. And this was also something that Kirk Gibson, who's running the dorms, he was an expert at doing this. He was also someone who debated at Brookwood High School here in the Atlanta area, also debated very regionally, and ended up being a quarterfinalist at the NDT. You should ask him about his last debate round. He loves talking about it. Loves talking about his final debate round, but particularly ask him about this outstanding judge, Scott Harris, who he loves more than anyone. Definitely have a conversation with him. But Kirk, one of the things that he did was that he ended up switching ass during the course of the year, and he got to the point where he knew exactly what the 2AR needed to be for particular judges, that he would change up the entire 2AR to fit that particular judge and what that judge wanted to hear. And towards the end of the year, they were reading an app, and no one wanted to go nag against them because they were just outstanding on their firm. Next section, goals, plans, and execution. Goals, plans, and execution. It's the little details that are vital. Little things make big things happen. John Wooden. 10 NCAA national championships in 12 years. I don't care what you're doing. If you're the best at it for 10 years over the course of 12 years, you're doing something right. And John Wooden is not only one of the greatest coaches, he's also one of the greatest teachers that you've ever seen. For him, when he's talking about the details matter, he was also talking about explicit goal setting, and that being one of the little details that you can make happen. Be explicit about what your goals are. Don't be afraid to have goals. Don't be afraid to be explicit about them. One of the suggestions that I make is that you write down what your goal is that you want to achieve for the course of the year. And you put that goal in your wallet. You put that goal in your purse. And that little goal, every time you go into your wallet, every time you go into your purse, it's a little reminder that you have a goal and you need to focus on it. But it's also a reminder to you that goal setting is good in every aspect of our lives. It's a path that encourages us to get better in whatever we're striving to do. So if your goal is to win 50% of your debates this year, write that down. Put it in your wallet. If your goal is to be the top JV debater in your league, write that goal down, and don't be afraid to have lofty goals. Don't be afraid to have stretch goals, because the fear of not taking a risk means that we probably don't achieve it. Now, we may achieve the lower level goals, but we've capped what our success is. Knowing your goals are important because they also determine the plan of action that you will have. They determine your plan of action. That if you don't know your goal, you really don't know what you need to do to achieve it. You don't know who the people are you need to talk to help you get better. You don't know what you need to practice on. So the goal is the starting point to determine what your course of action is and how you're going to get better. Second, visualize success. Visualize success. As I've mentioned, I've never delivered a speech where I wasn't nervous. It's also been a long time since I've delivered a speech where I didn't visualize delivering the best speech I have ever given before I did that speech. One of the things before all of the planning people were calling roll and I was up here walking around, the thing I was doing is that I was visualizing. I was thinking about, this is going to be the best speech that I have ever given. I'm going to captivate the audience. I'm going to have all eyes on me. I'm going to control the set. I'm going to wreck shop. Everyone's going to love me. They will walk out of this room saying, oh my God, I will never hear a speech as good as that ever again. I visualize my success. Now, there are a couple of things that comes from visualizing success. One is that you've already delivered the speech once already. You've already given it. So there's no reason to be all nervous about delivering the speech, because now when you deliver the speech, it's the second or third time delivering that speech, so you've already practiced it. Second, you've already heard the perfect version of that speech. You've already heard it because you've delivered it already, so that you know that you can deliver a speech that comes close to that because you've already done it. So you have a template of what perfection looks like. You have a template for what excellence looks like because you've already visualized it. You've already seen it. Visualize success. So, there was 2 years ago, one of the other ways in which this works, and it's just sort of a funny story. I think most people sort of laugh. I just think it's kind of humorous and sort of absurd at times when I think about it and tell it. Ovas, his senior year, then it was actually his junior year in college, one of the things that he would do as part of his sort of this visualization exercise, I sort of suggested this to him doing a big debate before their final round at Harvard his junior year. And one of the things he did is that he sort of took this sheet of flow paper and he turned it on its side and he just started drawing. And I had no idea what was going on. He drew like these dinosaurs, and then he drew these aliens coming down, and then there were these tanks that he drew on a sheet of paper, and then there were he put these rocket launchers on the dinosaurs, and then he drew these ninjas on there. And after about 5 minutes of this, I looked at him, I was like, oh wow, what's going on? Well, I thought you should be probably prepared and thinking about this. I said, I am. I'm protecting my house. But the dinosaurs got the rocket launcher, and the aliens are about to attack. And the ninjas got the swords, and the ninjas and the dinosaurs are on the same team, and they're about to wreck shop on these aliens, much like we're about to wreck shop on Michigan State. And so we're good. And his way of visualizing success was to doodle and draw. And before every big debate, from then on out, where they were at, before the 2AR, he would draw these pictures. It's just crazy, absurd pictures of, he was on the side of some entity. Sometimes it was dinosaurs, sometimes it was ninjas, sometimes it was Vikings, and they were fighting something else. And he just sort of put himself in that mood, in that moment. So, there are various ways to visualize success, and you want to think about how you can do that. Third, know your competition. Know your competition. It's part of your planning and goals. Know your competition. I think that you can divide your competition into 3 different areas. 1, those who are better than you. There clearly are people who are better than you. Just is. Most of us are younger. We're going to debate teams that are older, who are more experienced, who have been doing this a while longer. They're going to be better than us. That's okay. We're going to be better than other people. B, know those who are equal to you. They're on your playing field. It's going to be a good debate because you match up very well. And C, know those who you are better than. Know those who you are better than. What you want to do with that information is that the focal point of your preparation should be those that you are equal to. That's your measuring stick. Are you getting better than those that you are equal to? So your research effort should be based upon how are you preparing against those teams to beat them. Your practice rounds should be about those particular teams. Your speech redos should be about those particular teams. Now, eventually, what's going to happen is that the number of people who are better than you will start to shrink because you'll start climbing up into that rung and you'll start to prepare against them, and you won't have to invest as much time in those that you are better than, and that area will start to grow. But your focal point will be, how are you competing against those who are equal to you? That's one of the yardsticks that you're using. Setting goals is not the main thing. It's deciding how you will go about achieving it and staying with that plan. Setting goals is not the main thing. It's deciding how you will go about achieving it and staying with that plan. Newt Rockne, one of the greatest all-time winningest coach in Division 1A, won 81% of the games that he coached. You need a plan. You got to have a plan. What's your strategy for learning to critique? What's your strategy for beating those performance teams? How will you get better at writing overviews? The desire to create and execute a plan for improvement separates those who are ordinary from those who want to be great. Your desire to create a plan and execute that plan separates those who are ordinary and those who want to be great. Julie Hohen, a debater at Emory, won the NDT and was second in the race for the Copeland her senior year. Her plan was that, and she was a 2A, so that for every new app that she had, she wrote flashcards for every piece of evidence in that app. So the flashcards that you use for studying for your tests, she had flashcards. And those flashcards had the tag on it, one side, and on the back side, it had the reasons for the evidence and the utility of that evidence. And she would study her flashcards. She would diligently study her flashcards. And now that could have been for an app that was read one time for the sole strategic purpose of beating one team, or the app that was read for the entire year. She had the same process. She generated flashcards and she studied those flashcards. She was the second speaker at the NDT and was one of I think, the best debater in the country her senior year. And it was because she had a plan and she executed that plan. Second, thinking about your plan, is to have a plan to use your weak ties. You don't just have to use your strong ties like your immediate debate coaches Those are your strong ties. Those are people that you know, that you have an intimate relationship with, who are vested in your success. You also have weak ties. And your weak ties are people who know you, and you have some contact with them, but probably not on a day-to-day basis. Your judges, coaches at other schools, the people who you are working with in your labs. So over the course of the year, you have your weak ties. Continue to use those. Have a strategy for contacting your judges to figure out ways in which they can offer improvement. Contact other coaches. Sustain a relationship with your lab leaders. Jason Segalis is one of the better people at doing this on our squad. That after every tournament, he'll contact the judges who judged him at that debate tournament and ask them about speaker points. Ask them about the 2NR. Ask them about the division of the block. And he's sustaining weak ties because, one, those are people who are going to judge him in the future. But two, it also provides another set of people who can educate. Another set of people who can assist on improving at debate. Dedication and discipline. The will to win is important, but the will to prepare is vital. The will to win is important, but the will to prepare is vital. Joe Paterno. Now, probably should have taken this one out because my respect level for Mr. Joe Paterno has dramatically declined. But I think that this is a good bit of advice. Because we all want to win. We all want to be successful. But the measuring stick should not be the desire to win. The measuring stick should be the desire to prepare to win. So a couple of things that you want to keep in mind is that consistent practice, consistent, purposeful practice is how we get better. And by purposeful, what I mean is that you want to move the yardstick. You want to constantly challenge yourself to get better. If you delivered a speech in 8 minutes and you got better at that speech, deliver the same speech in 7 minutes. If you deliver a speech with the same speech for 7 minutes without reading any evidence, because evidence can at times become a crutch for us making our own arguments and thinking about that. Try giving a debate round speech where you have no evidence after you've grown used to delivering a debate speech with a lot of evidence. It's a test. It's a challenge. But it's a challenge that allows for you to get better. So move the yardstick constantly to test yourself, to get better. Because if you're constantly doing the same thing in the same way over and over again, you're not getting better. So move the yardstick. Do reading drills every day. Habits are developed after 24 days of doing the same thing. Whether that's smoking, whether that's doing reading drills, whether that's exercising. Habits are developed after 24 days of doing the same things. It just becomes easier. It becomes routine. So do reading drills every day on a consistent basis. Next, train to become a professional. Train to become a professional. That training starts now, and it demands focus, consistency, and dedication. That you want people to honor and recognize your effort, not honor and recognize your success. The greatest compliment that someone could pay you is that they could say, you are driven and you are a hard worker, and I see the hard work that you're doing. Success too often is determined by external factors. Hard work is internally driven. You own that. You know you did that. You know it's all yours. No one else can take credit for that. Success always has possibilities of other people taking credit for it. And other people should, because no one gets anywhere without the assistance of other people. However, your hard work is an essential component of that. The last area is value losing. Value losing. Show me someone who has done something worthwhile, and I'll show you someone who has overcome adversity. Lou Holtz. How we respond to the fear of failure and the lack of success says a lot about who we are and the type of person we want to become. How we respond to the fear of failure and the lack of success says a lot about who we are and the type of person we want to become. Champions take risks. Champions want the ball in crunch time. If you are so afraid of losing, you will never have the fortitude to excel. You got to be willing to take risks. You got to be willing to embrace the failure. No one becomes an expert overnight. You can't have 10,000 hours of investing in anything without there being some lows, a lot of lows. And you got to embrace those. You got to accept them as teaching opportunities, as moments for us to become the better person, as moments for us to become the best person that we can become. Adversity and failure is inevitable. Adversity and failure is inevitable, but the question is sort of how do we respond to it? There are John C. Maxwell, who's a motivational speaker, argues that there are two types of people. There are those who do not want to make mistakes, and there are those who want to get things done. Those who do not want to make mistakes, and those who want to get things done. And in one of his discussions, he talked about Sir Edmund Hillary, who tried to climb Mount Everest with an expedition team. And the first time the team did this, it was an utter failure. They didn't make it to the top. They had a couple people in their expedition team die. And Sir Edmund Hillary delivered a speech after this expedition. And at the backdrop of that speech was a picture of Mount Everest. And at one point during the presentation, Sir Edmund Hillary turned around and he said, "Mount Everest, you have defeated us, but I will return and I will defeat you. Because you can't get bigger, but I can get better." And I think that that's the way in which you want to look at adversity. That adversity rarely can get bigger in that immediate context, but you have a lot of opportunities to get better. And so, the last thing that I want to leave you with is, once again, a quote from Nicholas Saban, Roll Tide. "What happened yesterday is history. What happens tomorrow is a mystery. What we do today makes a difference, and the precious moment is now." So, have a sense of urgency, focus on getting better, be driven and dedicated, and I think that you all, everyone in here, has the capacity to be the best person that you can possibly become and make outstanding contributions, not only as a debater, but also as human beings to everyone else in life. And so I appreciate the opportunity that you've given to talk to you this morning, and enjoy the camp. Yes, why don't we take 5, and then we will hear from Melissa Maxey-Wade, our fearless leader here for the Emory debate program. So 5 minutes.
I thought it was going to be a legitimate lecture. I can't see that.
Hey, Amy, by the way, that was.
I can get you.